Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at a cheap knockoff, what I call knockoff, aftermarket 3/8 ratchet that runs on M18 batteries. Now they make some claims here, some bold claims if you read the font. 75 foot-pounds of torque, 250 no-load RPM. So we're going to take a look at these things and see if we can verify these and see what this thing is all about. It is brushless, 20 volts, which is your nominal 5-cell battery setup, and it is made by, boy, this is going to be a tough one, Adotocam, I don't know, but 1 year warranty, 20 seconds after you open the box, and 100% guarantee. Let's see what this thing's all about. And this thing is most definitely made in China, if you're keeping track. Okay, so in the handsome carrying case, we have some instructions that you probably won't read, and you have a very nice foam packaging that protects the ratchet. Okay, so I was curious because sometimes they actually have parts lists in some of these things, and this really doesn't, from what I saw. It describes to you the functions of what things are. It shows how to put the battery on, how to reverse. It's just basically a rundown of all of the functions, and absolutely nothing useful whatsoever. It does come with an extension, a 3/8 to quarter adapter, and a 3/8 to half adapter, so you can kind of make this work with various size sockets with what it comes with. So now, looking at the tool itself, I have to say, as far as powered ratchets go, it does look like it's actually brushless. I can see the motor right here and the size that the motor is. That is most definitely going to be brushless. We have an LED light on it right here. The trigger is more what the new Milwaukees are going to have. It's not that paddle trigger that's trying to be like an air tool. This is its own thing. It doesn't click, so I do believe it is going to be variable speed. And it uses your standard pneumatic tool ratchet head assembly, which gives me an idea, and maybe a future video. You should even be able to potentially loosen this and rotate this around if you really wanted to. A lot of times this hex collar can come loose. This is indeed metal. It looks like it's metal. It is metal. We have plastic here. I'm not going to pretend to know a lot about polymers to know what type of plastic. They have rubber overmolding here, which we can actually check the durometer on with our Shore A meter. So what we'll do is we'll just stab into it. You've got to be a little careful about this thing that you get the best reading. About a 64. Somewhere around a 70, I would say. You gotta be careful you get to a high spot, so somewhere around a 70. Now for reference, an M12 drill here is going to be around the same. 66, 68 or so. So it's about the same rubber feel as what you should be used to with a Milwaukee tool. So that's kind of nice. Now this does say it'll work on an M18 battery, which is good, but what I want to do first off is I want to see, before we put a battery on it, I want to see if this has low voltage protection built into it. And in order to do that, we are going to use our power supply, and we're going to hook it up to this power supply directly, and we're going to see what voltage, if at all, this thing shuts off. Something you need to be careful with on these aftermarket tools is they don't always have undercurrent or under voltage protection, and you can destroy your batteries with these tools. So let's test that out first and see what this thing, if it has any battery protection in it. Okay, so we've got our power supply out here, and what we're going to do is hook this up. I've marked positive and negative terminals on the tool, and we're going to hook this up and see if it'll run. Okay, so it will not run. That's actually a good sign that it's looking for the battery circuit. So that stands to be a good thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to put on this DeWalt to Milwaukee battery adapter, and what this is going to do is trick the tool into thinking it has an M18 battery on it. And hopefully now we'll be able to run the tool. Okay, so we can run the tool. Perfect. So now let's see what voltage this thing is going to get unhappy at. So I'm going to just run it. And we're going to just turn it down. Okay, so at 14.2 it turns off and it says it's not happy. So it won't work. Now let's see where it shuts off. Okay, so 15.2 is the lowest it'll continuously run. You get down to 15.1, it won't let you turn it on. So that's not an uncommon thing. Some tools, even Milwaukee's, if you hang on that trigger, it'll keep running. So if I hold the trigger, I can turn it down. .3, it caught up. Somewhere around 14.3, 14.2 if you hold that trigger, but she'll shut down at 15.2 if you're on and off the trigger, which is a good thing. So that is a safe voltage for your M18 batteries. So I am good to get going with some further testing now with just a battery on it. Also an interesting thing, let's take this up to our nominal 20 volts. Let's just see what full running current is, and I'll put a little bit of a load on this with my glove, see how much current this thing might draw. So loading it really doesn't restrict the current at all. You saw that. It does draw about 6 to 7 amps. And that's just a point of reference right now. We don't have a whole lot of other tools, but yeah, it's drawing about 6-7 amps. We'll do that one more time. Load it up, it gets up to about 7. I can stall it, by the way, with my glove, which is fairly common for a ratchet. Alright, so now that we know this thing is safe, let's go ahead and put our M18 battery on the tool. And we could test a few other things here. We could take a look at what RPM the tool is spinning at. They claim that 250 RPM. Let's see if that's what we're getting. They actually undersold it, the freewheeling RPM, with that 7/8 socket that has a reflective strip on it, right there. We're getting 360 RPM out of this thing. Okay, and for the fun of it, this light that is on here, you can see it's kind of blue. Here you can see our shop lights are right around the 4000K mark. Let's see what we get for the light on the tool. I'm gonna go with, that's probably a 10,000K light on this tool, which is, as you can see, kind of blue. 4,000, 5,000 are kind of whitish. 6,000's starting to get a blue hue. 6,500's noticeable, and this has a very clear blue hue to it that you can see. So 10,000K light color. Now looking at this, I just changed out to a high capacity 3 amp hour battery. I feel like the form factor of the tool is a little bit more appropriate with the smaller battery. Now that is a little bit more current as well, and it really is kind of within the lines of the tool, which is kind of nice. So I think the way this is put together, the way they did the adapter for the battery, it doesn't look like there's additional plastic. I believe this is the actual molding. It's very hard to tell. If it's not, they did a good job making this, that it doesn't look like it. A lot of times these aftermarket tools, this area can be a little bit different because they make the tool that they can put different battery blanks on it. I couldn't really fault them if that's what they did. It makes sense from a manufacturing standpoint. You do have the lock on it, which is a pretty good firm lock. I like to see a lock on cordless tools because if you put them around, say you put it in a toolbox or something gets on the trigger, you don't want the tool running. So keep track of locks on cordless tools if you're going to leave the battery on them. But a little bit of a delay, as you saw. You squeeze the trigger and then it comes to life. A little bit of a delay. We'll let that time out and it might be a little bit more obvious. I don't know if that came across, but there is a slight delay there. The light stays on for approximately about 7 or 8 seconds after you turn the tool on. So you do get some run time on light. Let's go over to the vise. We'll put a 3/4 inch deep socket on this and we will run this thing, bury some 1/2 inch fasteners and see how much torque it takes to loosen them. It's the best way I can kind of get to that 75 foot-pounds test. We'll see. Alright, so we're over at the vise with the ratchet. Now let's go ahead and buzz these down full speed, let it stall, and then we'll see how much force it takes to loosen them. Alright, we got them tight. Let's get the torque wrench and see how tight they are. Okay, so we've got our torque wrench. I guess I need to adjust the camera a second here. Alright, here we go. Let's see what it takes to loosen these. .38.4, 33, and 30.5. So you have about an 8 foot-pound difference on these, which kind of makes sense because depending on where that ratchet's at in its mechanism throw, you might get more or less force applied. So a difference of 8 foot-pounds with ratchets, that's why I like to do 3 of them, because it's a good average. So I'm going to go ahead and say we're averaging about 34.5 foot-pounds on how tight you're going to get running something down and stalling the tool, tested this way. I realize foot-pounds can be tested other ways, but this is how we're testing it. It's kind of a practical version of the test. Alright, so there we go. We played around with this thing a little bit. I'd say we're getting a tightening force of about 34.5 foot-pounds. As we said, that is a very subjective test. It's actually more of a compressional test. If you look at how they do it, that's generally massaging the numbers, but you'd probably get a different reading between a 3/8 fastener, a 1/2 inch fastener, those were flanged fasteners. There's a lot of variables there, but we pretty much do all the testing here on the channel with those 1/2 inch flanged fasteners, and we run 3 and we take the average of it. That's what we're seeing in real world. If you're out working on your truck or something like that and you're running home some fasteners, it's gonna be kind of like what we just did. So you could expect to see about 34 foot-pounds of torque. That being said, I wasn't expecting to see 75 foot-pounds out of this thing, but I was happy to see that we got a little bit higher RPM than they advertised, and the tool has protections in it for your batteries. So you don't have to worry about using this thing, running it, putting it down, forgetting what battery you have on it, all that stuff. The tool shuts itself off. That is really good, and something that I like to look for in these, what I call knockoff tools. So one more thing we could check out here, and that is how much weight would you expect to carry around if you had yourself a high output 3 amp hour battery and a 3/4 deep socket on this thing ready for battle. What kind of weight are we seeing on this thing? And I'm gonna say we're seeing about 73.7.6 ounces. So this thing's got some weight to it, but it really doesn't feel bad to hold. I kind of like how it's got that length to it. And this is metal, so if you're jammed into an area, you're not going to be ripping up plastic, you're into metal. So I really do kind of like that, but that does contribute to that 73.6 that we're seeing right there. So this was another version that we looked at, and you can see this is kind of an adaptation of another tool to make it work with a M18 battery, which is okay. This is what I was talking about. You can see this is plastic is a different color. When you look at it, it's very clearly an afterthought. This one, it all looks to be kind of the same thing. Another thing about this one is the ratcheting mechanism is nice and small, which is really good to get into small areas. But this one has the ratcheting mechanism that's a nice, I want to say it's almost a standard ratcheting mechanism, kind of a Lego part in the industry of manufacturing, I would imagine. And they've gone and made the whole tool, it's longer, you can see that, it's quite a bit longer, which means you should be able to break loose some decent length stuff and not stress the tool too much, which is good. This is more robust. I'm just curious to see if this is how they have it set these two bolts only and what's inside of there, and if that will break over time. If it does break, we'll have a follow-up video on the carnage. If it doesn't, you may see it in the background while we're building stuff or working on stuff here in the shop, because I plan to put this thing to use and see how it does. Overall, I think I kind of like it. It's a nice spin, and it's using M18 batteries. I think a ratchet on M18 batteries would last a really long time and maybe get a little bit extra torque out of them. I get the compactness of the M12, but a lot of your M12 tools, you can see it even here, this thing has a pretty girthy paddle. This is nice and thin because we've put the battery back here. Almost all of the M12 batteries have pretty big handles that allow that battery to go up inside of the tool. It's fine, it's what they are, but this is actually a much smaller profile through the length of it, and we could actually look at that and take some measurements on the overall length and overall length of this with the 3.0 battery, 19 inches. The widest part is the 3.0 battery, which is going to be 3 1/4-ish. Widest part of the tool, 2 5/8. We'll go 3/4. 5/8. 2 5/8. Up here at the handle, let's call that 1 5/8. Thickness here with the trigger, 2 1/4. Now in comparison, this kind of M12 knockoff, you're at 2 3/8, so it's just about as deep that way, but width-wise, you're at 2. So this seems to be a bit more compact up in here. It's nice and slender. You're down to about 1 3/4. So I'll be curious to see how this thing holds up, how it works. I think things like this are interesting, and I like kind of playing around with them and see how they hold up. So give me your thoughts in the comments below. Do you have one of these? Did you get one? Were you thinking about getting one? Did you get it and it broke? What were you doing when it broke? Were you abusing it pretty good, or is this the weak point right here? Let me know in the comments below. I really like to hear about those things. We did get to test RPM, the Shore A durometer of the rubber, our torque. We even checked out the light brightness, and the, I should say the color tone of this very blue 100K light. This was a fun video to play around with. I like stuff like this. It's kind of fun to screw with in the shop, and something else to have in the arsenal to take things apart and put things together. So as always, thanks for watching. Have a great day.